Welcome back everybody to linuxacademy.com. My name is Terry, and in today's course we continue our preparation for the Linux Foundation Certified System Administration exam. We will be wrapping up our HTTP services discussion for setting up name-based virtual web hosts in this video. We are concluding with the HTTPS or SSL setup for name-based virtual hosts for Red Hat and CentOS based systems. We've covered the name-based virtual host for HTTP previously for Red Hat and CentOS, and we've covered both HTTP and HTTPS for Ubuntu or Debian systems. We separated them out because each of the distributions handle both sides of that equation, SSL and non-SSL sites, differently. Their directories and configurations are different, and enabling those features are different as well. So now we're going to wrap this up with HTTPS configuration for CentOS and Red Hat Enterprise Linux. In our HTTP setup for Red Hat Enterprise Linux and CentOS-based systems, if we look at our HTTP directory, one of the things that we did is in the configuration for httpd.conf, we created a vhost.d directory and included it so that our virtual host configuration is imported from that directory. So if we look at our vhost.d configuration, we have our HTTP configuration for this particular server, tcox4.mylabserver.com HTTP, and that's imported and currently running as part of our system. Now, what we want to do now is we want to create a directory called SSL so that we can store our certificates in. So we want to, in the etc HTTP directory, create an SSL directory that will be able to create a certificate and key for us to store our certificates and then reference it within our vhost. Now we're going to use the OpenSSL utility in order to do that, but one of the first things that we have to do for CentOS is, unlike Ubuntu Debian systems, we do need to do an installation. So we're going to do a yum install on mod_SSL. And that'll install not only the OpenSSL utility that we need to enable the certificates and create the keys, but it will enable the module that Apache requires in order to support port 443 HTTPS secure connections. So now that we've made that directory, we've installed the module, let's go ahead and execute the command. And real quickly, we talked about how to use OpenSSL in order to generate a self-signed certificate and what it means for us to generate a self-signed certificate, what all of these different options are. If you want a more in-depth conversation and discussion about self-signed certificates in general and how to enable them for Apache, there is a video in this very course that covers this in detail. But what we're doing here is we're simply generating a key and then we're self-signing it using that key so that we can use it for this particular website. So the country name is US. We're going to go with New York as the state and New York as the city. The organization name is Linux Academy. The organizational unit name is Information Technology. This is where we're going to tell it tcox4.mylabserver.com so that we know what it is. And this is webadmin@mylabserver.com. So now that we've generated, if we take a look at our SSL directory, we have a couple of files, a CRT, which is my certificate file, and my Apache key, which I need to import both for my virtual host in order to configure it for SSL access. So now that we've got that configured, then what we can do is we can start with our configuration file for HTTP. We'll just do a copy tcox4 and we'll just change it to HTTPS. Now, if we take a look, we've got two identical files, but all we're going to do is edit and change the HTTP to HTTPS configuration. The first thing that we need to do is we need to change to port 443 here so that we are listening on port 443. And then we're going to add some SSL specific stuff. We're going to turn the SSL engine on. We're going to say SSL certificate file is in etc httpd ssl apache.crt SSL certificate key file is in etc httpd ssl and apache.key. Finally, we know that the server name is tcox4.mylabserver.com. Server alias is tcox4. My document root is tcox4. We don't need to make any changes there. We could add custom error or custom logs in this location as well, but we're not going to bother with that. We've now got two virtual hosts, one having the information for our SSL certificate installation, as well as one for HTTP. So I've got two different lab servers instances listening on port 80 and 443. And since we are on a system D CentOS 7 system, if we do a systemctl and a stop on HTTPD, then what we'll do is we'll start it. And again, if we've made a mistake like we did in the last video where we had one of the directories wrong, it will tell us what that problem is if we do a status. It looks like we didn't make any mistakes in the configuration, at least in the vhost directory. We can do a PSAUX to make sure that we are indeed listening on HTTP. We should now be able to close the window, open up here, open up a browser window, https tcox4.mylabserver.com. Again, we get a not really an error, but a warning that says tcox4.mylabserver.com can't confirm that it's secure. We add the exception. We can view the certificate, which once again tells us tcox4, and it's signed by us, Linux Academy with Information Technology. In both of those, we confirm the security exception, and we get the expected directory. So with HTTPS, for CentOS and Red Hat-based distributions, we have to enable by installing the mod SSL. We generated the key and the self-signed certificate in a directory that we created. We copied our virtual host from our HTTP configuration and added 3 lines that turned on the SSL certification engine, as well as the certificate key file and certificate itself were imported into the configuration. It was pointed at the custom directory we created earlier, and now we show a self-signed certificate for installation now that our vhost file has been imported after we restarted the Apache instance. So for a named vhost for SSL for Apache running on CentOS or Red Hat-based distributions, that's all there is to it. My name is Terry for Linux Academy.